very few companies had, computers. So when we started, or when I started work, we literally just started using the one or two, desktop machines, with dial-up internet connections. And to be honest, I was really fascinated by this new way of working. Although it felt a little bit like the Wild West, there was no such thing as service level agreements, no security, no structure. And I knew that that needed to change given our increasing reliance on technology.
Today, for a CIO, that means wearing a lot of multiple hats, right from strategy to communication
Mm,
to being a change
yeah.
agent as well, managing the business as well as the technical side. So, on a personal level, what part of the role energizes you the most and what still challenges you?
Well, first and foremost, I have a deep interest in technology, which is kind of important. You've got to really love what you're doing or love the field in which you're working. But I also love the impact it makes to operational efficiency. My background before I started APCO was as an operational research consultant. So trying to bring about operational efficiency has always been something that's been hugely important for me. So for example, when we launch an initiative that I think will have an amazing impact, it gives me a real sense of purpose that I'm actually adding to the company. But you're right, being able to communicate it effectively and manage the change, it's never been so important as now.
Hi everyone, welcome to the mainstream. I'm Simran Shivalkar, your host for today, and we are back with a new episode of our virtual Voice of CIO series. Today I have with me yet another tech leader. Well, I have Mr. Philip Fraser. Philip, firstly, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the series.
It's no problem at all.
Absolutely. Well, he needs no introduction. I will still take this opportunity and share a few things about Philip. He's currently the Chief Information Officer at APCO, the global advisory and advocacy firm, which is helping organizations navigate complexity and change. Philip's journey into tech leadership hasn't just been about systems and infrastructure, it has been about people, progress, and purpose. With a career that spans industries and geographies, he brings a thoughtful, human centered lens to the evolving role of CIO. In today's episode, Philip will share how he balances innovation with empathy, why cities like Dubai are becoming key players in global tech story, and what it takes to lead in a world where change is the only constant. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Philip, firstly, a dynamic experience so far, and like we all know, every leader has a story. Looking back, what are some of the key moments or some of the moments, your mentors have mostly influenced your journey into tech leadership, which eventually led for your role, as a CIO at APCO? If you can share.
Sure. So when I first went into IT, it was like really the early days. We're talking 30 years ago. Few companies had computers. There was an abundance of typewriters. You would walk into the office, you see typewriters and fax machines. As I say, very few companies had, computers. So when we started, or when I started work, we literally just started using the one or two, desktop machines, with dial-up internet connections. And to be honest, I was really fascinated by this new way of working. Although it felt a little bit like the Wild West, there was no such thing as service level agreements, no security, no structure. And I knew that that needed to change given our increasing reliance on technology. Like anybody who, started in companies, in the early 90s, technology was, on the up very, very quickly once people realized the power of the internet. So I saw it like as an opportunity to play a role in shaping how we were leveraging technology, albeit in its infancy. But I should add, generally, 30 years ago, technology leaders, they were highly technical and they talked in a very technical language that few people could understand. So for me, I had like a classical and a technical background. So I found it kind of easy. Well, I found it easier to talk about technology and its potential impact in a way that could be more easily understood by leaders, rather than talking, in, geek speak, so to speak.
Right, absolutely, and thank you so much, Philip, for giving us a glimpse of this transformative journey. And like you said, for tech leaders, right, from being technical to managing all the other aspects. On these lines, today, for a CIO, that means wearing a lot of multiple multiple hats, right from strategy to communication to being a change
Yeah.
agent as well, managing the business as well as the technical side. So, on a personal level, what part of the role energizes you the most and what still challenges you?
Well, first and foremost, I have a deep interest in technology, which is kind of important. You've got to really love what you're doing or love the field in which you're working. But I also love the impact it makes to operational efficiency. My background before I started APCO was as an operational research consultant. So trying to bring about operational efficiency has always been something that's been hugely important for me. So for example, when we launch an initiative that I think will have an amazing impact, it gives me a real sense of purpose that I'm actually adding to the company. But you're right, being able to communicate it effectively and manage the change, it's never been so important as now. Some of the best technology, they can fail simply through poor communication or just no consideration for change management. But on a personal note, being familiar with tech, sometimes, my kids often think I'm the coolest father who knows loads about technology, security, AI, what's the best LLMs, etc., etc. So I enjoy the fact that being in this field, it's basically allowed me also to have a stronger connection with the younger generation in the form of my children.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, every other day there's a new tech coming in, and the coming generation is more and more, open to new technologies these days. So, yeah, we are also hearing a lot of buzz about AI, automation, and other
Yeah.
emerging technologies. From your perspective, which technologies do you think are making a meaningful impact, not just in headlines, but in the kind of work APCO does globally?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, if you had asked me the same question several years ago, it would have all been about collaboration tools. But today, it really is about generative AI. I still think lots of company employees are using AI for convenience. The real objective for us at APCO is to use AI starting off with convenience, which leads to operational efficiency, and ultimately as a means to transform the business. I also think with the increasing use of private RAGs, MCPs, and agents, and also AI deep research, I'm seeing a level of impact in how our consulting staff do their day-to-day jobs I've never seen before. So we're trying to deploy AI in a way where it provides more than convenience, obviously, because that in my mind is the starting point for the use of any Gen AI, but actually in a way that reimagines some of our processes. And if I take, say, deep research as an example, it's having a profound impact by enabling our consultants to get up to speed quickly on a given issue, area, industry sector. This is like research that would have taken them days and weeks to do. It's now possible in a matter of minutes. So once this becomes part of their day-to-day workflow, the efficiency gains are massive. So it's just a practical example of how at APCO we're really starting to see massive transformation happening in terms of how we do our work, the speed in which we do our work, the quality of the work we produce.
Right, right. I mean, absolutely. Again, along these lines, Philip, I understand you've worked across global markets, and of course, APCO also has
Yeah.
a growing presence, in dynamic hubs like Dubai. Where, according to you, what stands out the most when we talk about tech and innovation, especially in the landscape? Is there a regional difference? How does it influence your strategy coming from leaders' perspective?
Yeah, well, I should start out by saying that, before coming to Dubai, I spent several years working in Washington, D.C., and also actually I worked in Asia for a year or so. When I came to Dubai, one of the things that I found really quite impressive was just the desire to innovate, the desire to do something different. So, I think generally there's lots of feelings of excitement about technology and AI in particular in this part of the world. And obviously with excitement comes innovation. So for me, it's about the talent pool. When I came to Dubai, I was just amazed at how many really, really good pools of talent there were, literally from surrounding countries. The UAE, for whatever reason, it seems to attract some of the smartest people from the neighboring countries, which is why actually we took a business decision to set up our worldwide IT hub for the entire worldwide company in Dubai. That's for IT infrastructure support, security operations, help desk support, and also for AI developments. I can't think of many places where this would have been possible. And as I say, we are based in probably over 35 countries. But for me, it was always going to work in Dubai simply because of that, because of the access to the talent pool, but the sheer enthusiasm of the people who work for us, because it's just this mindset of wanting to do better, wanting to innovate, wanting to excel. So yeah, that's probably the main reason from my perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Philip. And again, I really am keen to know. You also said, or you pinpointed, you couldn't think of a better place where this would have been possible. Dubai being one of the hubs. Do you think there's a lot that plays when we talk about the cultural difference, the regional difference, when we talk about people adopting to new technologies, businesses as well? Do you
Yeah.
think that
I
kind of
think
plays
it,
a role?
yeah, I think it's actually even more than that. I think, even with the government of Dubai, the government of the UAE, they've made a real commitment to embrace AI. And I think that that cascades, through the population. The government's supportive of it. Businesses are highly supportive of it. They want to get more involved. They recognize the paradigm shift that's occurring because of AI. And, again, I think, for, any of the viewers watching this, anybody who's involved in AI, on an operational basis, it's a very exciting area to be in. So I think the fact that you've got government, businesses, and people living here all really fascinated by AI and seeing the potential, it feels different to how it would otherwise feel in some of the other locations I'm working with. As I say, it's almost like a perfect combination.
Right, right. And again, Philip, I want to understand from you. Tech is always evolving. Businesses are always, they're always open about new technology coming in terms of adoption or otherwise. Well, in a high pressure, always, environment, how do you personally stay grounded? How do you encourage your teams to, balance innovation along with everything
Yeah.
that's going on?
That's a very good question. First of all, I think it's really important not to get complacent. IT platforms, connectivity, they're way more stable than they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. But that doesn't mean they can't fail. For me, having a structured approach for risk management, contingency planning, they're essential. They're the things that allow me to sleep peacefully at night, but also just really creating an environment where no single member of the IT team feels like everything rests on their shoulders. That we all work as a team, we support one another, which means when somebody's shift's finished, they can disconnect in the knowledge that things are being looked after by others. And I think that's really, really important, because when I think back, even in my own progression, 20 years ago or so, it was kind of a stressful time. And again,
Right.
people who've been around technology for a long time, they'd remember mail servers going offline for hours and days, networks going down. These things happened regularly. And now we're in that place now where there's very, very little downtime, but the tolerance for downtime is not, basically, nobody has a tolerance for things going down for even a second. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's important that people have an opportunity to decompress, to remember that, work is half of their life, their personal life is the other half. And it's important to get that balance so they can come to work, feel energized, and do a good job.
Well, absolutely, Philip. And again, coming from a leader's perspective, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice at the start of your tech career, what would it be? And do you think you could have listened?
Right. So challenging questions. Okay. I think if I would say be humble, but also be vocal. So when I was starting out, I probably lacked, I was new in a job. I probably lacked the confidence to tell my line managers a better way of doing something, risks of taking a particular course of action. Whereas now, I think, one of the key ways in which I'm managing the team, I constantly remind absolutely everybody, regardless of experience, regardless of tenure, that they have a voice and they've got an opinion. I never want to be that person who makes a really stupid decision because my team members around me are too shy to tell me their honest thoughts. I'd prefer that my team say, look, there's a problem there. That's the whole point of being in a team. So would I have listened to my advice then? Probably not fully, as confidence builds over time, but the quicker you can establish a voice, the more impact you'll make in a company.
Absolutely. I think this goes for all the industry sectors, no matter what kind of career
Absolutely.
space you are in, whether it's tech, non-tech, business, I think, or leadership roles as well. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful piece of advice, Philip. I think we all can take some inspiration from that. And again, I think our audience has a lot to take away from this session. Before we wrap up, any best practices or key recommendations that leaders in today's era can take when we talk about becoming at the forefront or taking the leadership roles in the tech space?
Yeah, one thing that we probably haven't touched on as much as I would have liked is probably security. Again, there's this mad race, to embrace AI. And one of the things, like we've been actively involved in AI for the last since 2018. So one of the things that concerns me really is the time lag between the necessary security to govern or to ensure that AI solutions are deployed in a secure manner. There's a whole host of solutions out there, riddled with security risks. So all I would say is, as somebody who's been involved in this for some time, don't assume that solutions naturally are secure from the start. There are so many AI solutions out there, and there are so many insecure AI solutions out there. So my advice would be, as always, do your due diligence. Don't get mesmerized by the promise of quick gains. Everything still needs to go through a security lens. It really does. Again, I've probably seen it more in some of the AI tools in terms of security deficiencies than any point in any new wave of technologies I've seen in the last 20 years.
Fantastic. Philip, thank you so much for being so insightful.
No, thank you.
So thank you once again for making this conversation very candid and insightful. And like I said, I'm sure our viewers and listeners have a lot to take away from this session. While we conclude, I most certainly look forward to connect back with you again.
Likewise. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Philip.